这个故事如果你听起来不累，那么你的听力水平在生活中是完全够用的。要持续提升英文，记得点击订阅按钮。我们开始吧。
The moment he stepped onto dry land, he knew something inside him was wrong. Long before this phrase had a name, before books wrote it down, before people used it to explain their lives, there was water, and there were creatures made for it. Near a long coast shaped by time and tide, there stood an old harbor town. The stones there were smooth, worn down by feet and waves. The sea was not just nearby. It was part of every breath people took. In that town, children learned balance before words. They stood on boats before they learned how to run. They knew when a storm was coming because the birds went quiet. One of those children was a young man named Elias. His family had fished these waters for generations. Nets were passed down like stories. Every knot had meaning. Every scar on his hands came from work, not from play. Elias did not dream of leaving at first. The sea gave him enough. It gave him food, danger, calm, and fear. It taught him patience. It taught him respect. When you fight the sea, you lose. When you listen, you survive. That lesson stayed in his bones. Then the harbor changed. Larger ships began to arrive. Men from inland cities came with sharp shoes and sharper voices. They talked about trade, factories, and money that did not smell like fish. They laughed at old boats and called them slow. They said the future lived far from the water. Elias listened from a distance, pretending not to care. But those words stayed with him at night. When his father grew sick, the sea suddenly felt smaller. Elias needed more than nets could give. So he made a choice that felt heavy even before he made it. He left the coast and followed the road inland, toward a city built on stone and smoke. Nothing there moved like water. The streets were straight and tight. Buildings blocked the sky. The river that ran through the city was trapped by walls, forced to behave. Elias felt the same way. He woke early but had nowhere to go. He walked fast but got in the way. He spoke, and people heard his accent before his meaning. At his first job, he worked in a warehouse near the rail lines. The floor was dry and cold. He lifted crates instead of nets. The work was hard, but not in the way he understood. There was no rhythm. No pause. Just noise and orders. His body obeyed, but his mind drifted back to the sound of waves hitting wood. One afternoon, during a short break, a delivery arrived late. Inside one crate were live fish meant for a rich man's table. When the lid opened, one fish slipped out and fell onto the stone floor. It flapped wildly, silver sides flashing under weak light. Its gills moved fast. Too fast. Men laughed and pointed. Someone nudged it with a boot. Elias froze. He knew that movement. He knew that fear. The fish was strong, healthy, perfectly made. But here, on dry stone, it was helpless. No matter how hard it fought, it was losing air with every second. Elias picked it up without thinking and threw it back into the crate. Water splashed. The fish vanished. The laughter stopped. A man nearby said, half joking, "That fish looked just like you when you first got here." The words hit harder than any insult. Elias smiled, but inside something cracked open. That night, he lay awake, staring at a ceiling too low, listening to a city that never rested. He realized he was not failing because he was weak. He was struggling because this place asked him to be something else. Still, life did not pause for understanding. Days stacked on top of each other. Elias learned faster. He learned how to speak less and listen more. He learned which streets were safe at night and which words to avoid. Yet every success felt borrowed. Like borrowed air. Then came the flood. After days of heavy rain, the trapped river broke free. Water rushed into streets and cellars. People panicked. Horses slipped. Carts overturned. The city that had tried to control water now feared it. Elias did not wait for instructions. He tied ropes, guided boats through narrow paths, and pulled strangers from rising water. He moved with calm because water made sense to him. By morning, the damage was clear, but so was something else. People looked at Elias with new eyes. Not as a worker. Not as an outsider. But as someone who belonged in that moment. Later, as language traveled and stories spread, people needed words for that feeling. For the pain of being capable but misplaced. For the strange shame of not fitting where you stand. They found it in a simple image. A fish out of water. The phrase survived because it was honest. It did not judge. It explained. A fish out of water is not stupid. It is not lazy. It is not broken. It is simply away from what gives it breath. History moved on. Ships grew larger. Cities grew louder. But the phrase stayed, passed from sailors to writers, from workers to students, from parents to children. It followed people into classrooms where they felt small. Into offices where they felt unseen. Into new countries where every sound felt wrong. If you have ever felt your voice shrink in a room full of people, you already understand this story. If you have ever worked twice as hard just to stay afloat, you already know the meaning. Being a fish out of water does not mean you do not belong anywhere. It means you have not yet found where you swim best. And when you do, everything changes.
能以非母语者的身份专注学习到现在，这本身就是很棒的进步。真诚感谢你的观看。如果你觉得本期内容实用，点赞或留言让我知道你的想法，这对我持续创作非常重要。我们下期见。